Welcome to Forecasting with Friends, everybody. We're in a little bit of a different venue today because we are recording something. See, our main studio where we normally do this. We have one of our favorite people, Heather Sullivan. She does her Dollars and Cents segment, not segment, but show that comes on every week on Fox Local. So if you're not watching this on Fox Local, you should be. And if you are watching it on Fox Local, you could use your remote and down to Heather's segment. So anyway, she's over there. I'm here. I'm also here alone today, very lonesome because John Dawson is off. Allison will be back tomorrow. Also, I'm hoping, the plan is we're going to have a very special guest on the show tomorrow. She'll be with us for the whole half hour. So that should be very cool. I think you all are going to really learn a lot, and it's going to be great. It'll be really great. So today's weather, we got it kind of split in half. We're talking about big time heat in Texas. That's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And then, of course, we have the season's second hurricane landfall. Two hurricanes, two landfalls, both in the United States. And that's Debbie that hit Florida yesterday and is now bringing lots and lots of rain to particularly South Carolina, but also Georgia. So I want to begin with a look at our weather graphics here on Links 1 because we're going to talk about local weather and also what's happening over there on the East Coast. So right now here over the city of Houston, this is our perch downtown. We're looking off toward the south. Way off in the distance, you may be able to see NRG Stadium, NRG Park, and in the medical center. And temperatures are hot. I mean, look, it's 11:02 in the morning and we are already at 91 degrees. So we're on our way up toward highs near 100 today. The heat index currently in Houston is at 100. So we're definitely off to a very hot, very humid start. Right now, temps across the rest of the area are even hotter in some locations. Up at the big airport, 92 already. Cypress is 92. Sugar Land and Katy at 91 degrees. And it's also 91 for Galveston, which is pretty remarkable because it's going to be much more humid down there. Obviously, the island surrounded by water is going to have much higher humidity values. And so with a temperature of 91, it gives us a pretty unpleasant feels-like temperature that we will take a look at here coming up in just a little bit. Now, I want to take you over here to the East Coast. So this is a live view from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We got some folks walking along the beach there. It's really not all that dangerous at this point. Obviously, the water is pretty stirred up. The sea is angry, my friends, because of the storm that's just actually about 100 miles or so, maybe a little bit more than that, just off to the south and west of this location. So folks kind of dipping in the water there, before anything gets any worse. They have been getting some squalls, though, and when the squalls come through, the rain obviously picks up and also the wind picks up. This is a look at the radar perspective here over the last 6 hours of Debbie there spinning right along the coastline of Georgia, not too far away from Savannah, Georgia. And around here, not much of anything going on other than that hot weather and some hazy sunshine. Here's a closer look at radar here over the last 6 hours, and there are several rain bands that have set up, although at least for right now, they've kind of calmed down a little bit. Charleston really got some very heavy rain late yesterday and overnight. The radar estimated rainfall totals were about like 10 to 12 inches of rain just inland from Charleston. And a lot of that rain is now either dissipating or split up into rain bands that are closer to Wilmington, North Carolina, and actually not too far away from Charlotte right now as well. This is the latest 10 a.m. advisory that we have, so it just came out an hour ago. The system is entering an environment where it's going to just sort of loiter a little bit, meander a little bit. So when it made landfall there on the Big Bend region of Florida near Cedar Key, it was moving at about 10 to 12 miles per hour. Now it's moving at 6 miles per hour to the east-northeast, which means that shortly the center is going to reemerge over the water there, over the Atlantic Ocean. And so it will have a chance of strengthening a little bit. In fact, here's the forecast showing it becoming a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm by tomorrow morning, a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm by Thursday morning, and then maintaining a pretty high level as it moves inland. It might even still be a tropical storm, actually, as it passes by between Charlotte and Raleigh-Durham. Here's a look at the 3-day rainfall totals. So down around Sarasota, Florida, give or take about 16 inches of rain. We also had a bullseye just to the north of Gainesville, between Gainesville and Tallahassee. 15 inches of rain, and we're getting close to 15 inches of rain just up the coast from Savannah near Charleston. So this really is a pretty dangerous rain-making system, and it is not done yet because, like I said, it's going to hang around another couple of days. This is a look at the forecast rainfall totals from the National Weather Service, meaning how much additional rain is going to fall for the rest of this week, and they're looking at between 10 and 15 inches of rain from Charleston to Wilmington, North Carolina to almost the Outer Banks, and then back up to around Raleigh. You could be seeing about 10 inches of rain. The flash flood risk has now shifted northward a little bit. So while we did have that high risk a little bit farther to the south into Florida and Georgia earlier, now it's moved up into South Carolina, North Carolina. And there's even a slight flash flood risk, as far inland as Charlotte. Not quite to Atlanta. Looks like Atlanta's going to miss out really on the majority of the really nasty stuff here. The other question now becomes, well, is there anything else out there? And sort of. We do have tropical waves. Now, we get tropical waves all the time. Dozens and dozens of tropical waves. They're just like little areas of low pressure. They don't spin necessarily. It's what we would call a trough, and they just kind of march their way on the trade winds across the tropical part of the Atlantic Ocean and Caribbean Sea, and most of the time they don't develop. Sometimes they do. There's one there right in the middle of the map, kind of near the bottom. Then there's another one that's approaching the islands of the Windward Islands of the Caribbean. So we'll keep an eye on those, but neither one of them really is showing any imminent signs of strengthening. So good news there. Just to recap here, if you missed our show yesterday or you didn't hear me mention it, we're 4 out of 4. We've had 4 storms forming so far this season, and all 4 have made landfall on the Gulf Coast. There have been 2 tropical storms, 2 hurricanes. Both hurricanes have, of course, hit the United States. One in Texas and the other one in Florida, and now off of the East Coast. So we'll take a look at this forecast in more detail coming up, but just count on seeing more August heat. I have some video that I want to share with you on the latest on what was Hurricane Debbie, now Tropical Storm Debbie. It's actually, this is sad news, it's responsible for at least 4 deaths in Florida. 3 people died in crashes related to the storm. I'll talk more about that here in just a minute. A 4th person died when a tree fell onto a mobile home. The storm, of course, made landfall early Monday as a Category 1 hurricane. Water rescues, as you can see, they got the airboats out there, a lot of airboats in Florida, especially down in the Everglades. Sarasota, Florida, was far away from the center, but they saw about 16 inches of rain, as I just showed you. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says that even though the storm is moving out, river flooding is still a concern. Tropical Storm Debbie has been bringing prolonged downpours and flooding to southeast Georgia and to the Carolinas, even after making landfall in Florida. And obviously, so that rainfall threat continues. And it's interesting, along these coastal areas, they're kind of getting a mix of both inland freshwater flooding, like rain, and also some storm surge flooding, which same thing happens around here. It sort of restricts the rivers from draining into the sea. All right, so Tropical Storm Debbie also, as it makes its way off the East Coast, after becoming a deadly storm in Florida and in Georgia, also knocked out power to about 250,000 homes. The storm making its way now into South Carolina. We're not really sure how much damage or power outage it's going to cause there. Some people, though, were noticing, myself included, that the total number of folks without power there in Florida was about 200,000 or less. I think it was about 160,000 compared to our Beryl, which of course knocked out about 2.5 million customers without power. People in Charleston, South Carolina are certainly not taking any chances. They're filling up those sandbags. Now, that's something that we don't usually have to do. It's painstaking work, isn't it? I mean, gosh. It's back-breaking labor to fill up all those sandbags, but they have to do it in these coastal areas because they expect the storm tide to rise and flood their homes and businesses if they don't put up those sandbags. So that's going to help to protect them from experiencing any serious flooding. All right, so back on cam here, I wanted to talk a little bit about, we've discussed this back when Beryl was hitting, talked a little bit about this. I was at the desk with Anthony Antoine and Rashi, and we were talking about some of the hazards that come along with hurricanes. And most people think of wind, you know, the high winds, or, you know, which obviously resulted in things like knocking down trees, which did turn deadly. The trees, you know, even from the derecho, right? The trees fell on homes, the trees fell on a car. Very sad. So that's direct fatalities from the wind. But we also have a lot of indirect, well, drownings, of course, too, from the rain. But we also have a lot of indirect fatalities and injuries. And one of the things that's very commonly overlooked are car crashes. Now, remember around here when we didn't have power for a week from Beryl, most of the traffic lights were out. Some of them were blinking red, some of them were just plain out. And you know, you have to revert to sort of what they taught you when you first learned how to drive, which is to drive defensively. You know, you have to look out for the other guy, expect that the other people don't know the rules and that they're going to crash through the light. Well, that actually happens more frequently than you would think. And there are a lot of car wrecks that happened after a hurricane hits. Because think about it, you've got debris down in the road, you've got trees down, you've got tree limbs down, sometimes you have power lines down, you have people who are under stress, you have emergency responders who are out there like fire trucks, ambulances. It can get a little bit chaotic if you're out on the roads, let's say the day after a storm hits or even a couple of days after a storm hits. So you may have somebody who is coming up on a light. I know this happened to me, maybe it happened to you because I drive into work really early, but you're kind of just cruising along, you don't see a light until you're right on it. And I'll admit, this was in the middle of the night. You know, I kind of blew through one on a neighborhood road that wasn't, you know, there was nobody else there. But I thought, okay, now I need to be more alert because you're not even going to see a flashing red light. So if two people did that at the same time, that's how you end up with traffic fatalities. So 3 of them in Florida were as a result of a traffic fatality. And then, you know, the other thing is, you know, mobile homes are perfectly fine. You know, they're a great affordable place to live and to call home. But when there's severe weather, whether it's a severe thunderstorm, obviously a tornado or a hurricane, it's just not usually a very safe place to be. And so a tree fell on one on Monday morning when the storm was making landfall and unfortunately caused a fatality. So just think about, you know, we're not out of the woods yet this hurricane season, not by a long shot. I mean, we're only on storm number 4. We have a lot more on the way. And I think all of us just need to be more aware of the hazards that we face both before the storm and after the storm, and not just during the storm, and to remind your family about those hazards too. Because sometimes people, you know, you get caught up in kind of what you're doing in the day-to-day and kind of don't maybe become a little bit apathetic might not be the right word, but just like a little bit maybe not paying close enough attention like I was when I, you know, went through the light that wasn't lit up. So anyway, so that'll do it for the update on Debbie. Coming up next, we have some natural wonders of the world that we're going to check out. In fact, one that goes back to ancient times. And the latest on problems in California and how it's actually affecting our forecast here locally. See you in a couple minutes. beautiful Sicily in the Mediterranean. Mount Etna erupted yesterday, causing nearby airports to divert some flights. Hot fountains of lava and large black clouds of ash and smoke went as high as 6 miles up into the atmosphere. That's reaching up to the stratosphere. Mount Etna is Europe's largest active volcano and has been going through an especially active period over the last 5 years or so. And of course, the eruptions go back to antiquity. They've been writing about that since the Roman Empire and before. So, beauty of nature, but still pretty scary, right? All right, we have an update now on the park fire that has been burning out in California. It's only 30% contained. This is amid rising temperatures. Cal Fire says the blaze is still raging. They're having problems with temperatures and humidity values out there, exacerbating the fire. It's already charred more than 400,000 acres across 4 counties, destroyed more than 570 structures. This fire, known as the Park Fire, is now the 4th largest wildfire in California history. So I want to pull up a couple of weather graphics here for you, Juan, if we could. Director Juan is helping me in the booth right now out of PCR 2. On Links 1, I have a map here that tracks smoke for us. And so I'll zoom in here and show you where these fires are burning. So right here, each of the red dots, let me take off these those arrows. It's annoying, isn't it? There we go. So each of these red dots here in California, and in fact everywhere, indicate spots where we have hot spots or fires. Now, there have been a lot of fires burning up here in Northern California and in Oregon. And zooming in here, this is what we're looking at here, is right here around Chico, California, and just to the north of that area is where we have the fire. And in this dark gray is the smoke plume. Now, this ends up getting carried by the steering currents and the upper level winds and so forth, and it can wrap all the way around. So, it gets blown up this way, usually by the jet stream, and then if the jet stream comes down like this, then you get some smoke across parts of the Midwest, and it could make it all the way here as well. In fact, I do have a graphic. I'm going to pull this up for you. This is our computer model projection of smoke. So this is going to show us, I think I have this set over the next 24 hours. Okay, so this is like the next 36 hours. And let me put this into motion here, and you'll be able to see how the smoke is going to be spreading across our area here. So we start to clear out maybe a little bit coming up on Wednesday, and then it builds back in a little bit by Wednesday afternoon. So where is all this coming from? Well, let me go ahead and zoom out here for you, and you'll see that the thickest smoke is out here in California from that fire that I just showed you. And putting this into motion, you'll see, look at that, how the smoke plume just gets picked up by the steering currents, pushed into Nevada, pushed out of Oregon, back across Idaho and into Wyoming. So this actually spreads across a big chunk of the country. It's surprising to see the extent to that, that the smoke plume actually travels. Now, as far as its effect on our weather, we look at something called the AQI, which is the Air Quality Index. And it's broken down into these categories, with green being good, and then most days, rarely are we good. Most days we're moderate, which is yellow, and then some days we're unhealthy for sensitive groups, and today is one of those days. So this is a combination of two things. There's a little bit of light smoke in the air, believe it or not, some of that coming from the California and Oregon wildfires. And then we just have plain old ozone that's forming out there. And ozone is invisible, although it does tend to form on hazy days. It is not actually haze in and of itself. The haze you see is either dust or smoke or what we call particulate matter. Ozone is invisible. Ozone is a variety of oxygen. The oxygen that we know and love, that we breathe all the time and need to live, is 2 oxygen atoms that are joined together, called O2. Ozone is just a variety of oxygen, which is O3. So it's 3 oxygens that are stuck together, but your body doesn't like that. Your lungs don't like that. And so when you breathe it in, it can act as a lung irritant. Now, there are some things that ozone does really well, which is interesting, and that is it freshens the air. It's one of the reasons why the air smells nice and fresh after a thunderstorm. It also is used, like ozone generators are used as air fresheners. I know people use them if you are like a car detailer and you have a vehicle that stinks. You actually use an ozone generator and you kind of blast it into the car. The thing is, you're not in the car when the ozone generator is going because it would be unhealthy to breathe it in. So today, unhealthy for some. That means people with heart and lung conditions, older adults, children. Limit your time outdoors. It doesn't mean that it's going to be just, gagging, gasping for breath, but if you are in a, Ruben laughed at me, it's not going to be like you walk outside. It's not like that. But, if you're really sensitive to it, you don't want to be going for a jog like Ruben just did after his live shot. So coming up in just a moment, after this break, we will have an update as to this heat wave, and it really is a heat wave across the state of Texas. And I'll also tell you what I learned this morning from Lena DeFlores, who is our grid ERCOT, watchdog. That's what she is. So I'll tell you what she had to say about our electricity issues coming up next. Welcome back. All right, so enough about volcanoes and fires and weather on the east coast of the U.S., at least for a minute. Let's talk about our local forecast, which is all about the heat. And other than maybe an isolated blip or two of a thunderstorm, heat is going to dominate. Now, this is the outlook for the day today. We're going to get probably into the upper 90s in most locations today. By the way, we're not under a heat advisory, and that has to do with the fact that we actually got down into the 70s this morning, so that's one of the criteria. And the heat index is not really exceeding 108, which is sort of our cutoff here for heat advisories. Now, it's a different story over here. I mean, New Orleans could get close to 100 degrees. That's actually very rare. You think of that being a hot city, and of course it is, but Not in terms of actual temperature, it isn't. Most of the time it's just the extreme humidity. High temperatures today, about 102 in Dallas, roughly 100 for Austin and San Antonio. But it's tomorrow that we really start to crank up the heat, because we're looking at, look at this, highs right around 100 here, 104 Dallas. How about 108 out in Abilene? 103 Austin and 104 San Antonio, Corpus 99. And this is where that energy kind of issue comes in. The ERCOT, the questions about ERCOT and the price of electricity and stuff when the traders get into it and all this stuff, is that you look at the major population centers. So Texas is a large state, and yeah, a lot of people live in El Paso, and people live in Midland and Lubbock, but really it's about these areas. Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, the Austin to San Antonio, which is almost a metropolitan area in itself right now, and of course the Houston area. So we're looking at 100 to 104. So I asked Lena DeFlores this morning, I said, hey, do we have to worry about the grid or anything? And she said that within the last year, that ERCOT has put online like a system of batteries that will store power to sort of protect the grid if there's too much of a strain on it, like we had obviously during the big freeze of 2021. So that's good to know. That's good to know. So I learned that. I'm going to look more into that. It's really interesting. Heat index value right now, Galveston 107. Sugar Land 106, just unreasonable. About 100 to 101 here in Houston. Energy usage planner, so we use this. This is just like an estimate based on temperature and humidity. Are we going to be kind of like average or above average on our energy usage? Well, we're getting near that most energy level. We're not necessarily breaking any records as far as our local temperatures, but it's the hottest weather that we've had so far this summer. Current conditions in town right now, 91 with a mostly clear sky. You see how that wind is variable? That's why we have the ozone watch in effect. The sun comes in, so you have pollutants near the ground that are known as nitrogen oxides. It's abbreviated NOx. And the sunlight actually comes in and it knocks an oxygen atom off of it, which is what forms that ozone that I just mentioned. And it happens on days like this very frequently. So really, really hot day out there. By the way, here's a look at allergy levels that are all low to medium and likely to stay that way. And here's another look at an array of temperatures that we will talk more about, as well as your 7-day forecast on the news at noon. I'll see you then.